Hey, Astolfo was trending on Twitter this weekend. I always thought trending was for corporate shills and algorithm abusers like it is on YouTube. So why Astolfo? Oh. Welcome back to Otaku Daikun. Dai here. We're here for another Dai Time, an opportunity for me to react to all the latest happenings in the anime world, as well as share more about what I'm up to behind the scenes. After all, when I'm not making videos, I'm watching anime or playing games to come up with content, and I want to make sure that everything I experience makes it to an actual video. In general, though, you can always get an idea for what I'm thinking on Twitter, but that's not exactly a civilized platform now, is it? At the very least, I have more on my mind than I could possibly fit into a single tweet, so let's get started. Admittedly, this first one is not exactly newsworthy, but as a guy who mostly covers Fate content, I just have to address it. Astolfo, our beloved femboy, has gained a lot of popularity recently for perhaps the silliest reason. The internet sure can tell us a lot about culture, and in this case, curiosity might have gotten the better of most of us. Long story short, a Korean cosplayer under the handle Kotomi Tako had the mad lad idea of taking some cosplay selfies, showing off his magnum dong. No joke, this thing's got more length and girth than a Monster energy drink, via proven comparison. Now I see what Jean was so surprised by. Anyway, instead of just sharing these photos or the original post itself, it seems like the rumor of such an outrageous picture spread like wildfire, causing many cultured individuals to search for the image for themselves. This made the search term Astolfo quite popular, leading tons more people to use the term to either find out why, or to simply flood the hashtag with all sorts of wonderful Astolfo fan art, cosplays, etc., effectively burying its original context. To those uninitiated, it seemed like a celebration of Astolfo being a really fun character, causing the rest of us to laugh knowing the full truth of the matter. Apparently, the original post has been deleted, but thankfully myself and others have screen caps and such. Personally, I just find it hilarious that at some point, people were all like, "Hey, there's this crazy picture of an Astolfo cosplayer with a colossal titan under skirt," and everyone just had to see it for themselves. While this is indeed silly, I also feel it's a perfectly valid expression of fandom, and it's surely resulted in many people on Twitter discovering the character for the first time through celebration. In a similar yet admittedly less explicit manner, we also have the sudden popularity of Lady Dimitrescu from the upcoming Resident Evil Village game. Lovingly referred to as the Tall Lady, this character has been well received by eager fans, obsessed with her intimidating height, assets, and villainous cruelty. Memes have certainly helped with this popularity, as many jokingly express a desire to be dominated by this wicked woman. Personally, I don't see the appeal. As I've said in previous videos, I find photorealistic graphics kinda ugly, and this lady's extreme clown makeup isn't that flattering to me. Let's just say I never liked Harley Quinn for her makeup. When I look at all the Resident Evil fan art of her, I think she looks way better in those than in her original game. Perhaps if she'd been introduced through an anime aesthetic from the get-go, I'd be more on board. Or perhaps I'm still just salty that mods make way better costumes for Jill than Capcom does. Either way, do you feel the allure of Tall Lady? What captivates you the most? More exciting to me is the fact that in FGO JP, we're getting Karen as a servant. For those who never experienced hollow ataraxia, Karen is Kirei's daughter, a tragic priestess of the Holy Church that gets rather intimate with Anger Mainyu. As divine as she looks, Karen is subject to great suffering, as she has an ability to detect people who have been possessed by demons, at the cost of her body mimicking the same harmful effects as the possessed individuals. It's great to have Karen on board the FGO train, but it also makes me question when, if at all, we'll get a Bazette servant. After all, I like a woman who can kick my ass. Going back in time a bit, I want to toss my opinion on the whole space buns controversy surrounding Animal Crossing. It's not that complicating, really. Nintendo put out an update for Animal Crossing, providing players with more options for customizing their appearance. One player seemed to really enjoy these new options, putting their character in what they called cute space buns, only for malicious vermin on Twitter to quickly assert, "Those aren't space buns! They're Afro puffs, and they're meant for black people. Stop appropriating culture." Y'all should know I already made a video talking about cultural appropriation in anime, so I'll just reiterate that our creative fiction, our fantasies, should never have to be limited by reality like that. In this game, you talk to animals, and if we're going to be that unrealistic to begin with, why would we give a damn about whether it's possible for a white person to get afro puffs or not? Character customization exists in games to give a genuinely egalitarian approach to expression. It should allow players to do what makes them happy, and it's bullshit to try and tell someone else how they should design their character. Reducing all of these options to cosmetic choices for the player helps us escape certain biological restrictions that often prompt racist behaviors. They let us put any clothes or hairstyle on any body type, gender, or skin color without assumption or stereotypes. Thankfully, Nintendo stood up for this, stating that their customization options were made to be used by all players, as it should be. Gives me hope for the future of gaming when Nintendo does the right thing. Thankfully, they also did well in not bending the knee when tons of people attacked the developers of Sense, a cyberpunk ghost story, for supposedly objectifying women. Sense was an indie game that originally released on PC, but recently has had releases on both Switch and PlayStation consoles. Prior to these releases, the game got mega popular after being made the target of an online hate mob that took issue with the fact that the game's women had large busts. The devs basically gave haters the middle finger, prompting a slew of harassment and tasteless threats, proof that people who claim to fight for social justice are far more hateful and toxic than gamers who just want to have some fun. It's another win for us defenders of fiction. Sadly, the same cannot be said for the upcoming remaster of Mass Effect. This updated version, titled The Legendary Edition, will be a graphical overhaul of the first 3 Mass Effect games, streamlining the games in what should be the best way to experience them. However, while improving things like visuals and gameplay, the devs at BioWare also decided to improve the game's woke factor by altering camera angles that dared to show off the butts of its female characters, specifically Miranda. The new devs claim that the original camera angles served no purpose, so they changed them in an attempt to appease female gamers. I've been over this kind of thing many times before, but what stands out to me is that while these camera angles aren't necessary or profound in any way, they did give the game a certain personality that will no longer be present. Sometimes, damn, she's got a nice ass, is an aspect of a character's design. It frames how other characters see them. Is removing these butt shots ruining the game? Not exactly, but neither was their inclusion in the first place. Even if we are to admit that the angles truly are problematic, I just can't stand this culture of pretending the past never happened, like we can't celebrate something older in spite of its faults. Next, I want to talk about VTubers. Calliope Mori of Hololive recently released a rap song that called out other virtual YouTubers for not producing content. She was criticizing a rather strange subculture surrounding VTubers, in which people would create their avatars, introduce themselves as up-and-coming content creators, yet never debut with any videos. Instead, they just hang around on Twitter and give hot takes. In theory, there's nothing wrong with this. It's great that people online have found a new way of expressing themselves, forming supportive communities around a common interest. What bothers me, however, is that I don't think we should really be calling these people VTubers at all. Technically, I've been a VTuber from the very beginning, and all it really means to me is that I'm using an avatar to present myself rather than in person. I find it useful in that I can either present myself as a unique character, or simply show off an ideal version of me that reality doesn't allow for. That said, I have to actually make videos if I want to succeed. The avatar is merely a means to an end. For these prospective VTubers, however, the avatar is the end, and that's not a VTuber at all. It's just an OC. Again, nothing wrong with that, but I see it as a trend for people making original characters, and instead of posting to somewhere like Tumblr or DeviantArt like they used to, they're instead hijacking the popularity of VTubers to give their OCs a false sense of importance. Then, many of them have the gall to call out creators like PewDiePie and Pokimane for exploiting the VTuber community, forgetting the fact that literally anyone these days can make and use an avatar, and that's the beauty of it. As ridiculously basic and lazy as PewDiePie's default Vroid avatar is, the fact that he used that avatar to create content makes him a more valid VTuber than half the people who have yet to debut. Honestly, I debuted the very moment I posted my first video 6 years ago, and yeah, I'm nowhere near where Hololive is. I don't have that kind of marketing powerhouse, but at least I never expected anyone to subscribe to me just because I exist. Again, I don't mean to deny anyone their expression either. I just wish the term VTuber actually applied to people who, well, tube. As a complete side tangent, I also find it kind of frustrating how very few VTubers using anime avatars actually seem to cover anime content. Like, I love anime avatars, but I don't see what any of that has to do with Minecraft, Fall Guys, or Among Us. Props to Kiara for streaming Atelier Ryza. Another case of hijacking a term for its popularity comes from Idris and Sabrina Elba, who claim they're making their very own anime. Yay. Okay, I love me some Avatar, Korra, and Ruby, and I feel that in many cases these works might as well be considered anime, since their fandoms overlap and they're clearly inspired by anime actually produced in Japan. Even Korea and China have games that might as well be anime despite not being made in Japan. Heck, it's great when we get anime-styled works that are willing to explore more international ideas, rather than taking place in the same generic-ass high schools. However, anyone in Hollywood who claims to love anime and either wants to make their own or adapt a popular franchise is going to have me skeptical. Typically, anime is cool for all the reasons Western media is not, and as excited as I am to see Western works become more like anime, I fear the reverse is true. The creators are actually trying to make anime more Western. Obviously, I don't want that. Even if an anime tackles Western ideas, I'd still prefer the central creative control to come from a Japanese perspective. It seems that Idris and Sabrina want to create an Afro sci-fi series called Dantai, and if they're willing to truly work with Japanese creators to make that happen, props to them. If they're just making a show and calling it anime to bank off its success, well, that's another story entirely. We'll have to keep an eye out to see if Dantai can truly earn being called an anime, or if it's just a cartoon in disguise. Lastly, I want to talk a bit about the anime I've been watching. As I feared, the promised Neverland Season 2, while being just as visually and audibly stunning as its first season, is not hitting the same dramatic notes due to the new storyline. A major character has been revealed very early on compared to the manga, and because of that, it just lacks the emotional punch that it truly deserves. The anime may still redeem itself, but it'll never be able to eclipse the dramatic heights the manga achieves. I can only complain so much, however, considering some adaptations have it much, much worse. I first found out about the Island of Giant Insects through its manga, which is surprisingly entertaining and very well drawn. It's basically a much edgier anime-themed Jurassic Park, where instead of dinosaurs, we have monstrous bugs that can either slaughter you outright, or worse, use your body as a host for their children. It's every bit as ridiculous as it sounds, but I personally think anything in anime can be compelling with a good artist. The manga is quite beautiful, in the same shocking way as Goblin Slayer's manga, and yet none of that beauty carries into the anime. I decided to watch it for fun, and it really is one of those so bad it's good anime, as long as you acknowledge that going in. The 2D animation is lazy and lifeless, made all the worse by having the insects rendered in 3D CG. It's impossible to find them intimidating since they're just too hilarious. The art style is watered down, just like Goblin Slayer's anime, but to a worse extent, and the studio clearly had no idea what the fuck they were doing. Toward the end, they tried to give our protagonist a badass moment as she walks down a hallway to confront the film's final bug, but it goes on so long, repeating shots, that it creates the exact opposite effect. I just don't see why people even bother to make anime if they're going to look sloppier than the original source. Either way, if you like edgy anime horror with lots of lewdness, you might want to check out the manga, only watching the anime to see just how much better it could have been. And with that, I've exhausted all the topics I've prepared for this week's Die Time. As always, feel free to hit me up on Twitter or my Discord with issues you'd like me to comment on. Enough about me, though. What do you think about any of these topics? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching. If you enjoy this channel, help me beat the algorithm by liking, commenting, and sharing the video, subscribing to Otaku Daikun, and, most of all, smashing that notification bell so you don't miss out on all of my anime discussion, lore, or Let's Play content. If you want to support me directly, there are now 3 ways that all provide the same benefits. You can click Join here on YouTube, or join Patreon or Subscribestar for access to exclusive vids and early access. As always, celebrate your fandom.